Toronto 2012. From the drama at City Hall involving Mayor Rob Ford and his fellow councillors, to the stylish pet monkey that got lost at a local IKEA.
Anyone lose their monkey at IKEA?
2012 was definitely the year of outlandish headlines, but nothing captured the world's attention more than the brazen gun violence the city was experiencing.
No matter the country or language, the headlines from Toronto are the same.
A shooting spree inside a downtown mall.
Across the globe, television stories and newspaper reports describe the violence and chaos at the Eaton Centre.
Fast forward to June 2nd. 2 people were killed in a gang shooting at the Eaton Centre Mall, which left 6 innocent bystanders wounded and hundreds of shoppers trapped when the violence unfolded. Then, just days after the Eaton Centre shooting, notorious drug trafficker and rival of Sinaloa cartel affiliate Nick Nero, John Raposo, was shot 4 times in the head at point-blank range on a College Street restaurant patio that was filled with people watching a soccer game. The incident made international headlines, though city officials pointed to the wider statistics that paint a picture of a city that is both safe and highly livable. However, as all this was happening, a decade-long gang rivalry in the city's East End would boil over.
During what many call the largest street gang investigation in Toronto's history, the long-standing gang rivalry stems from a confrontation with another group that calls the streets of this area home. The Malvern crew has its fair share of ties to criminal activity. Malvern gang members were also rounded up by police in 2004. Many from both gangs have since been released.
During the early 2000s, Scarborough gained notoriety for its incredulous gun crime. In May 2004, Toronto Police Services targeted an infamous Scarborough gang, the Malvern Crew, after a rash of gun violence in the area. Project Impact led to 65 arrests of alleged members who faced a total of more than 500 charges, including attempted murder. At the time, it was Ontario's largest anti-gang crackdown ever. With subsequent investigations, Toronto police discovered that members of Malvern Crew's rival gang, the Galloway Boys, were in fact the ones responsible for most of the gun crime in the area.
And the so-called Galloway Boys have owned these parts for a long time. Just ask the police.
The Galloway Boys typically are just a little bit south of here, off of Kingston Road in the Galloway area. This would normally be referred to as the Orton Park area.
One homicide investigation led to Project Pathfinder, which resulted in the arrests of more than 24 G-Way members and associates. The city would see a dramatic decrease in violent crimes in the following years. However, residents were concerned it wouldn't be long before the Malvern Crew and the Galloway Boys got back out. There were actually conflicts within the jails, within the facilities, said one source, adding that many of the men arrested in the crackdowns and convicted of gun possession were only given 5 to 8 year jail terms. She went on further saying, "So not only did we know that after 5 or 7 years they were coming back out, but they were being released at the same time as each other, and many of them hadn't moved from the community, so there was a lot of concern that when these guys came back out, they may not necessarily be on the streets controlling things, but they were able to have influence on some of the younger kids, especially the ones who watched them go to prison." Well, they were right. When they were released around 2010, they began mentoring youths recruited into the gang. The younger members obtained guns and used them in conflicts for control of the gang and territory, resulting in a string of shootings and killings in 2010 and 2011. By the summer of 2012, things were no different. In fact, it only got worse. On July 16, 2012, Danzig resident Shannon Longshaw, a 28-year-old mother of 2, organized a blocko party for the Danzig Street housing complex, located in Galloway. Since the 1970s, blocko parties have been held each year at different Toronto community housing residences without incident, but all of that would change on this day. Several newly recruited members of the Galloway Boys caught wind of the party. One of them was 19-year-old nahom tsegazab. On his Twitter account, at Two-Tone Shorty, he had been promoting the neighborhood gathering as a Hennessy block party. The messages promised a live DJ and 30 bottles of Hennessy cognac on ice, free for all. Over the course of a week, more than 24 open invitations were sent from the account and spread across social media. It gained so much traction that Danzig residents made Twitter posts expressing concerns over the potential for violence, but it certainly did not stop anyone from going. The party began in Shannon Longshaw's backyard at 2 p.m. Tenants provided food and children's activities, including face painting and an improvised water slide. Nahom handed out school supplies and basketballs. The children's party was to end at 5 p.m., but by then adults were already assembling in the parking lot, and that's when the Galloway boys, quote-unquote, took ownership of the party. By 7 p.m., a crowd was gathering and alcohol was being consumed to loud hip-hop music. An hour later, there were Jaguars and Hummers parked around the block, pot smoke in the air, and more than 200 people packing the complex's narrow internal lane. Worried about the presence of people they did not know, some residents took their children inside their homes. One resident could not use the walkway without bumping into people, describing it as being like a jammed nightclub. Several noise complaints were made to police, and bicycle patrols were dispatched, but the party was allowed to continue. Amongst the large crowd was 14-year-old Shyanne Charles and 23-year-old Joshua Yasay. Joshua was a York University criminology graduate, an honor roll student intending to parlay his degree into a career with the police force, possibly in forensics. He volunteered at Lester B. Pearson High School in Malvern, shooting hoops with youngsters after school and helping them with their homework. In 2011, he opened up a barber shop in Ajax called the Goodfellas Barber Lounge. 14-year-old Shyanne Charles was a student athlete who had just finished her freshman year at West Hill Collegiate and was an active member of the local Boys and Girls Club. She was known for always offering to help staff and encouraging younger kids to play sports or learn how to dance. On the day of the block party, Shyanne was texting with a friend about what was going on. "Yo, cut from there," the friend wrote. "Why?" Shyanne asked. "I'm worried for you guys," the friend said. "What happened?" "We're good, Shyanne said. Meanwhile, Joshua Yasay drove to the party from Ajax with a friend after spending the day working at his newly opened barber shop. A few hours later, Yasay texted a friend, Steven, to say the party was a disappointment. "It's not really my scene. I don't feel like being here." "Don't be there, just leave," Steven replied. Both Shyanne and Joshua stopped replying to messages at 10:16 p.m. It was at this point in time when Nahom and his brother Naod, along with several other Galloway boys, started G-checking people they did not recognize and telling them to leave. 18-year-old Shaquan, a freshly recruited Malvern crew member known as Bam Bam, who had come to the party alone, was ordered to leave by Naod. He even threatened to shoot Shaquan if he did not leave immediately. Angry at being forced to leave, Shaquan sent out a number of texts as well as social media posts asking fellow Malvern crew associates to shoot up the party with him. Nahom was warned about the potential shooting. He then armed himself with a .40 caliber pistol and told other G-Way affiliates to be prepared for a possible shootout, which they did. About 45 minutes would pass before Shaquan returned with folorunso owusu, aka Chaotic. Chaotic was a 17-year-old gang member from the Chester Lee crew, another violent Scarborough gang. Both Chaotic and Shaquan were confronted by Nahom, who displayed a handgun and even challenged Chaotic to a fight if he did not leave. Residents at the scene calmed Nahom and had him put the gun away, warning him about the kids in the area. It was at that moment when Chaotic opened fire with a handgun, striking Nahom twice. Nahom fell to the ground in front of 207 Danzig Street. He then reached for his gun and started recklessly firing rounds at Chaotic.
Danzig, a small street in Scarborough that many had never even heard of until they woke up to this.
Good morning, this is Breakfast Television. We will have the latest for you on this East End shooting.
News of the worst mass shooting in this city's history. Jarring images of panic, fear, and disbelief.
Is this empty?
15-year-old girl got shot, and my mom brought her in the house, tried to stop the bullet.
Danzig Street near Morningside in Lawrence.
He was a gunshot.
Nahom fired 11 shots into the crowded party, hitting Chaotic several times. A third shooter associated with Nahom then pulled out an Uzi submachine gun and proceeded to spray recklessly into the crowd. 24 innocent people were hit and 3 people were trampled by the panicked crowd, including a pregnant woman. The shooting victims' ages ranged from 22 months old to 33 years old. Shyanne Charles was fleeing from the initial gunfire when she ran into the line of fire of the Uzi spray. She was struck by several bullets and collapsed and passed on the doorstep of 203 Danzig Street. Joshua Yasay was shot by a bullet that pierced his heart and lungs, killing him instantly. 2 hours after the shooting, Shaquan's home, which he shared with his mother, was shot up. Fortunately, she wasn't hit. Chaotic and the rest of the injured, many of which suffered life-altering injuries, were taken to 5 area hospitals by 16 ambulances and an emergency medical services bus. This was the first occasion that Sunnybrook Hospital's trauma center, then the largest of its kind in Canada, declared a code orange for mass casualties, with almost 100 staff involved in the response. 3 years after the incident, a team of paramedics were honored for their actions during the shooting. Chaotic was released from hospital a short time later as police weren't able to link him to the incident. 6 weeks later, he was riding a bike near his home in the Chester-Lee area of Scarborough when a lone male approached him and fired 1 shot at him. The shooter was later identified as Naod, Nahom's 15-year-old brother. It is clear that Naod intended to kill Chaotic, but apparently his gun jammed, causing him to fire the 1 shot. That shot, coincidentally, struck Chaotic in one of his legs. He managed to run home while Naod ran off. Both were eventually arrested for the shooting. Following an investigation, the police obtained information that connected Chaotic and Naod back to the Danzig incident. Both were subsequently charged with first-degree murder and other serious offenses. Toronto was left mourning for weeks. During that time, prayers, tributes, and donations poured out from locals and people around the world. When city officials were questioned again about the safety of the city, they again diverted to the wider statistics, presenting Toronto as one of the safest cities in North America.
For Mayor Ford, though, the message is the city is safe. What happened on Danzig Street is not part of a greater trend.
I consider it isolated. I know this is a safest city in the world. I've always said that.
The day after the shooting, Drake tweeted his condolences to the families of Shyanne and Joshua and said, "Senseless violence in Toronto has to stop." He later pays tribute to both of them on a track called "No Guns Allowed," featuring Snoop Dogg. At the 2-minute mark, he recalls getting a tearful call from a friend about the tragedy. Drake also penned a message to the killer, telling him, "Everyone is real eager for a conviction." Fast forward 3 years later, the Danzig Street trial would begin, and first up would be Malvern crew member Shaquan. After an extensive investigation, police uncovered shocking evidence, revealing he was in an apartment building 9 kilometers away at the time of the shooting. In fact, no connection was found between Shaquan and Chaotic, who had initiated the shooting. Weirdly, Shaquan had continued to claim credit for the shooting throughout the 30 months he was in pretrial custody. His lawyer suggested that since he had called for people to shoot up the party, he may have thought people close to him had done it and so took responsibility. Shaquan pleaded guilty on January 23, 2015, to counseling to commit murder, possession of a firearm, breach of a prohibition order, and uttering a threat. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Nahom tsegazab pleaded guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter and 6 counts of aggravated assault and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. Nahom admitted that in participating in the gunfight, he was a party to all the ensuing deaths and injuries. In March of 2020, he was granted day parole, which was extended in October for another 6 months. Nahom's little brother, Naod, pleaded guilty to the attempted murder of Chaotic in the Chester-Lee shooting, as he carried out the attack in belief that Chaotic had shot his brother. Naod, who was 16 at the time of the incident, was sentenced as an adult to 7 years in prison. He was released in January 2018. Chaotic pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder against Nahom, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and 1 charge of reckless discharging of a firearm. The defense maintained during the 7-week trial that Chaotic was innocent and a victim of circumstance, shot while attending the party. The Crown later provided a recording of Naod in the courthouse cells identifying Chaotic as his brother's shooter. However, Naod testified that he invented the story to look tougher in jail, while Nahom testified that Chaotic did not shoot him at all. Despite the testimonies, Chaotic, who was 17 at the time of the incident, was sentenced as an adult to life in prison on December 7, 2016. He was eligible for parole after 7 years, but was denied at his most recent hearing. As of the making of this video, he is still incarcerated.
I'm happy that Josh's family got justice, but I'm still hurt that my daughter's killer is still out there.
That suspect number 5 that you're talking about, would you like to plead to him or any words to say to him?
No.
If he's watching right now, what message would you like to send to him?
Too many lives have been gone. My daughter was only 14. She didn't deserve to die like that. And I want him to come forward. Like, you know who you are. You know what you did. And people know who did it. And they need to put themselves in my shoes. And they need to realize that a 14-year-old girl got killed for no reason. For no reason.
Hallett was found lying in the stairwell at the south end of 4110 Lawrence Avenue East.
The bullet holes start on the second floor and they continue on the wall behind me. We can see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the ceiling, a 7th in the side, and the 8th pierces through the corner and lands on the far wall.
There were no children at the daycare center at the time because of the weather, but normally the area would have a lot of traffic, parents and kids going in and out.
2 arrests have now been made in the shooting death of a man inside a Scarborough apartment building Tuesday afternoon. 25-year-old Dean Howlett of Whitby was shot and killed in the stairwell of the building on Lawrence Avenue near Galloway. And now 22-year-old naod tsegazab is charged with second-degree murder, while 21-year-old Joseph Carlton Bryan is charged with accessory after the fact. Both men are from Toronto and are set to appear in court today.